I'll just give everybody a minute to settle in, and then I'll be calling the meeting to order. Just another minute.
Hear you now. Okay, very well. Sorry, I'm a bit slow.
I have those days too.
Arguments there, did you? See, you took me a bit there.
All right, good evening, everybody. I will call the regular April 18th meeting of council to order at 5:30 p.m. Introduction of amendments to the agenda, clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I have none.
I'll ask for a motion that the agenda for the regular council meeting of April 18th be approved as presented. Mover, Councillor Curlew, seconded by Councillor Fenelon. All in favor? Carried. Declarations of pecuniary interest.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I have none.
Thank you. Adoption of minutes. Motion to adopt the minutes of the following meetings: March 21st, 2018 statutory public hearing, March 21st, 2018 regular council meeting. That these minutes be approved as presented. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Southall. Discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Carried. Come on in and find a seat. We'll go through the determination of items requiring separate discussion. Staff reports. Number 1, appointment of acting CAO. Councillor Timpson. Transload facility. Thank you. Councillor Fenelon. Council remuneration and expenses 2017. Councillor Timpson. The keeping of chickens. We'll lift that. Yeah. And if there are members in the audience that want to speak to it, good, we'll give you the opportunity when the item comes up. And use of corporate resources for election purposes, policy number 1-13. Okay, so we have 4 items being lifted. Adoption of items not requiring separate discussion. Motion to adopt item number 5. Use of corporate resources for election purposes, policy number 1-13. Have a mover, please. Councillor Curlew, seconded by Councillor Forbes. All in favor? Carried. This evening we do have one delegation, and it is from the Keewatin and Patricia District School Board. And if you're ready, sir, or you have had a chance to settle in, we're right to you. You're on the agenda. Do you need a moment, or you're good? Good. And you can come up to the table right here and introduce yourself. I do know that Sean Monteith is on the schedule, and Sean has let me know he wasn't able to travel today. And I'll let Richard, you introduce yourselves. Once you're settled in, the microphone should be on there. And this is an update on the Sioux North High School construction.
would like to do a quick handout here.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna do this, guys. Which one's your last one? Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. Bring me those back for a sec, guys. You're out of order. You got a better idea than me. Because these are not in order. This is different. That's weird. Yeah, see? Oh, I get it. Okay, yeah, all right.
They're in packages of 4.
Okay. There.
Thank you.
This one's gonna be broken.
It was a test for you.
Thank you. We can share if there's not enough.
Circulating in the public, or is there enough to?
Well, there's not enough for everybody, but I can certainly. I can share it. There's enough to go down each row. So if you just wanna, no, they're a package. They go half and then a package. You see where it goes? We'll just share and then just pass this out. Well, there's enough for 3 rows here, so.
I haven't been in. I got invited to go in.
Is anybody else supposed to use it?
All right, so if you're ready to proceed, Richard,
Okay.
just introduce yourselves first, and off we go.
Thank you. My name is Richard Finley. I'm the Superintendent of Business for the Keewatin Patricia District School Board. I'm here with Steve Parker. He's the Manager of Facilities. And basically, Steve is our point person on this project. We just had a tour of the new high school today, and I have to say, I'm a lot more optimistic today than I was yesterday. It's when you go inside and take the tour, it actually looks like a school now. Whereas 6 weeks ago, when I was in there, you could tell it was kind of a school. You could tell what the gym was. You could see the hallways. But so much more optimistic today. So basically, we're probably, I'd say, about 6 weeks behind schedule. But it's still slated for occupancy September, right after the long weekend for the first day of school. So we're, like I said, very optimistic after the tour today. We have walls erected, the roof is in progress, and it looks like the cafetorium, which is probably of interest to a lot of people in the room maybe, it's going to be beautiful. So if you look at the handout, probably the last page of the 4, it's just a drawing of what it's going to look like. And it's going to be spectacular. I was in there today, and you can see the seating isn't in there yet, but you can see the stage, you can see the big huge window looking to the outside. And once you're in that space, it's going to be spectacular. Just like that picture looks, it made me really excited. The seating itself in the picture will be seating that goes against the wall, probably about 4 feet wide when it's all up. And then it telescopes out, just like it's shown in the drawing. Seats about 200 people. And so the word cafetorium, for people that may not know what that means, it's a combination of an auditorium and a cafeteria. So when the seating is back, it will be used by the school as a cafeteria. And community groups like the Northern Lights group and the concert series group will be using that for their theatric performances moving forward. Now, speaking to that next school year, so starting in September, those groups will continue to use Queen Elizabeth District High School for their performances. We just want to go one full school year with just school use of the school. Iron out all the kinks, if any, and then open it up to the general public after that. Now, part of the school, if you look at the other drawings of the school, it's one end is going to be, and I'll just reference it. If you look at the picture, this picture, and just so you know, that big thing on the very end there, that's the library with all the floor-to-ceiling windows. But on this end, we have a partnership with Firefly and Confederation College, and so they've got that one end of the whole school, which is a great fit. You know, they can have mental health leaders in there, and that's a big need in our schools at this time. And for Confederation College, it's a great partnership because it'll make it easier for kids to transition from secondary to post-secondary school. Also allows us to run dual credit programs all in one location. Programming in the school. It's basically designed to meet the needs of all the learners. We have all kinds of things. There's programming for life skills, such as the trades, construction, automotive, food science, cosmetology. We also have a place for the arts, music, drama, film production. And there's also university and college preparation, including co-op placement programs running out of the school. Now, I'm not sure if you realize how the school was named. It went through a year-long naming process that had community involvement and involvement of all the students in the school. 2 students got together and came up with the name Sioux North High School. So it's great that the kids were involved. And just as a side note, speaking of children in the school, as part of this whole transition to a new high school, they've changed the school colors for the sports teams from what they are now, where it's green and gold. It's going to be, for anyone familiar with hockey, it'll be more like Dallas Stars NHL hockey team. So it's a green with more black rather than the gold. They've also are going to be changing the logo from, they're going to keep the name Warriors. For anyone that maybe is an alumni of the school, they're going to keep the name. That was important to the kids, but they are going to change the logo from the current logo to a logo that will be unveiled in the near future. So it's a state secret right now. They won't even tell me what it's going to look like. So what's going to happen with Queen Elizabeth District High School? Next year, like I said, we're going to run community use programs out of that school. There will also be, not this coming school year, but in September, a year from this September, we're looking at, we've developed some partnerships with First Nation communities in the north, and we're looking at running a transition program where kids would come in from the north for grade 9 and 10, and maybe get them up to speed so that they can catch up academically if they're behind. And there's another part to that Sean Monteith actually has been involved in But since he's not here, I'll speak to it. I don't know nearly as much as Sean, but I guess there's been many discussions between the municipality and the District Services Board about potentially accessed funding for new housing. I think it's 40 or 50 units, and correct me if I'm wrong, where there'll be 40 or 50 units for families and children to come in and stay and live in Sioux Lookout and go to school. So that's a great, it's a win-win partnership. As far as the future use of the school, other than being a transitional school, at this point we're not really sure. We'll basically do our due diligence and see how much growth we have. Right now the school is built for about 512 pupils. It was built with expansion in mind, so part of the design is that if it actually grows to the point where we think it will, we can easily do an add-on to it. It was designed with that in mind. So at this point, I'll take any questions from the floor. And Steve's the expert, so I may defer probably a lot of them to Steve.
So council questions? Councillor Curlew.
Good evening, and thank you very much for what you've shared thus far. I wondered if you could speak to the space that's being created for teen mothers that have their children and do want to continue schooling. So I know there's a portal at this point in time that some activity takes place with regarding that. So in the new build, what have we planned to accommodate their needs?
Yes, so what we call it is the PASS program. It's currently running at QE right now, and because through the design process they knew that that was going to be a continuing need at the new high school, there is a built-in facility for that as well. We're almost there's a link within the school. It's near the cafetorium and music arts wing. It's called a connections wing. It's 3 or 4 programs in a row that are all based on, there's a 4 directions program, there's the PASS program, Connections is another one that we use. So they're all sort of integrated programs within one another, but PASS in particular, it's basically an in-school childcare that we have set up for the secondary school students to both learn from and use that facility during the day while they're in high school programming.
Councillor Forbes.
You said the new facility has capacity for 512?
Somewhere around that.
What is your current enrollment at QE?
We're projecting next year it'll be just over 500. But we're projecting in about 3 years it'll be the biggest high school in the district, approaching 600.
What is QE at right now?
I think it's somewhere around 480.
And the gym at QE has retractable seating. Does the gym in this facility have retractable seating? And is the gym in this new facility bigger, smaller, about the same size as the other one?
I'll speak briefly to that and then give it to Steve. When I was in there today, it's got a full-size basketball, volleyball court, but you can also put 3 volleyball courts going the other way. So I would say, I would think it's bigger, but I'll let Steve talk to the details.
Yeah, we classify it as an oversized double gym. I honestly am blanking on the square footage right now, but it is equipped with retractable bleacher seating similar to QE's right now. And as Richard said, it's set up for multiple gaming, so we can divide the gym in half and have 2 full court or 2 volleyball court games going on in a tournament situation, or retract the seating and have or pull out the seating, and have full volleyball or basketball courts going on. There's also badminton lines set up, 4 badminton courts set up in the gym. So off my memory, I think it's larger, a little bit larger than the existing QE facility that we have right there, right now.
Is the height
height,
Taller too?
height is taller, I know. Again, not off the top of my head, don't know how much.
Councillor Bath.
Yeah, you mentioned there was skills programming in this and in trades. Are we actually going to have shops in this school again?
Yeah, so technology shops built within the school. There's a full transportation, which is automotive with hoists and dual hoists in there, as well as all of our equipment for small engines. There's also a manufacturing element built into that shop so that we're not just focused on the automotive transportation, so they can do a small amount of tool and die fabrication stuff in that shop. Adjacent to that is the construction shop, so the full gamut of woodworking as well as early small residential construction type projects. Intro to construction is what we call it. So there's also tech shops beyond that. So we have communications tech lab. So it's a computer lab, but it's essentially for the media arts. They can do the school can do their video announcements, broadcasting out of that studio as well as graphic design with the computer stations that they have. We also have a cosmetology shop that's going in, so this is for hairstyling and aesthetics. So the kids, it's been an uptake in the school in the last couple of years. They've got a teacher teaching the program now, and quite a bit of uptake from the students. So they're teaching barbery and hairstyling, and I won't talk to it too much because I'm not intelligent enough to say it, but you can go get your nails done basically, so stuff like that. But it's a specialized shop for that type of use.
Councillor Timpson.
Yes, I haven't kept up with how the cafetorium was funded. I recall that, there was a donation from one of the service clubs. I don't recall. Did we get funded for that from NOHFC or FedNor or someone?
No, I'm fairly new to the school board, so I missed most of the build up to where it's at now. But they had FedNor funding, is what I've been told, and then I think the Rotary stepped in with a big some funding as well. And
There's a bit of a concern with your statement that you're not going to allow us to access the cafetorium, that there was this part of our funding, that's how we are to raise funds and attract other disciplines to the community so that we can earn revenues to pay for the additional cost that wasn't covered for the facility, because we transferred the full amount to the school board. So that's the first I heard, but that's fine with me. We're going to have to address it with the funders and myself.
okay, I'll briefly speak to that and turn it over to Steve. So it's not like you won't have access, and I might have used broad strokes, but the idea is that we need to make sure the students have full access, and we iron out all the kinks first before we turn it over to the community use people. It's not a sure thing that it will be the full year, but I know for sure for the concert series and things like that, they needed a commitment last month and for use in the fall, and we weren't prepared to give that commitment. So for sure in the fall, there won't be any use other than the kids, but I'll let Steve talk to that, because Steve, just so you know, I didn't say this in the introduction, but he just came from a school board in Southern Ontario where they built at least 10 schools, 16 schools.
Well, I was part of those, but
That's what I mean. So
we were 3 a year.
Steve, where he came from, they built 3 schools per year. So he's been around the block, and that's why I have a lot of confidence when I say that we should be there in September. But I'll turn that over to Steve to clarify that.
That's fine.
Thanks.
My concern is that we have to go back to the drawing board and just have a quick discussion around how the school board can assist us in leveraging or promoting the revenue that we need to raise, and how can we do that during all events at the school then. We have to supplement it, but we also have
Okay.
to market it as an economic spin-off to and a community access, like multi-purpose facility.
Okay. think you and I need to talk after. For sure, okay?
The o-
Like tape Dean.
The only thing I was going to add is we actually do have a steering committee set up for this partnership, and the municipality's been integral to that, obviously. But we have all of the partnering members been sitting on that steering committee through. I've only been on the steering committee for a year and a half now, but I know there was meetings and discussions going on before that. So the latest discussions at those steering committee meetings has been we were required to give a commitment as far as community use, and what we offered up was if we could hold off until Thanksgiving in the fall, we'd have a better sense of what will be available as far as cafetorium use. So at that point, when it came time to the entertainment series and other vendors booking the facility, we suggested that we will allow QE to be used, but until that point, we didn't really want them inside the cafetorium in case there were, again, there's a fairly sophisticated sound, lighting, and rigging system in this cafetorium. So if you start having events and it's not operational to its fullest extent, then it's going to be harder to get people back in there. So we want it fully operational and fully commissioned in order to have those permits released. So as we get further into the summer, we're going to realize dates. They'll be a lot more accurate, so we can hand them out and communicate to everyone.
Councillor Southall.
You did mention there's provisions for expansion. Is that up or is that out?
If the architect was here, he would answer out because there are provisions to expand the footprint. Coming in a little bit newer to the situation, I have done additions up as well. So, and we aren't going to sacrifice anything within the structure as far as going up. So we do have the ability to both either add on to the second story or the first story, to make a second story, or to the future addition goes east towards Sioux Mountain. That's where the current planned addition is.
It just seems like the grounds are a little tight right now, and if we start to,
I would always rather go up. We already have a second story, so it's more beneficial to maintain vertical.
Further comments from the council table? I would just say that on the cafetorium, the municipality advocated hard to get that included into the facility. We were a significant part of convincing the Ministry of Education to do that, and community groups were a significant part of the design element. So we will want use as soon as possible, I would say, and I know that there'll be discussions to follow up on that, as will the community groups who are putting money into it as we have. Anybody in the public have a question regarding the new school? Go ahead. You might need the mic and state your name and.
Solar PV has not been integrated into the model at this point. What we've done, so the easy answer is there's propane fired boilers that are the main source of heat for the school. The entire facility has in-floor radiant hot water heating, so that on an efficiency standpoint is the most efficient way to heat this building. The electrical, there's no electric heat. The electrical is providing fan power and lighting. The entire building is also lit with LEDs, so there's no, again, just going on highest efficiency components possible. LEDs throughout the facility is the way we've gone. So I can say coming in again, I wasn't involved in any of the design, just in the construction portion of this model. It will be a high performer, like a very efficient performer as far as energy goes. A lot of the decisions that have been made are in the right direction as far as we call it responsible resource of stewardship of resources. So yeah, it'll be a very efficient building. And if you drive by now, you can actually see what you see on the exterior is a spray foam. So our insulation is a spray foam application, which we're gaining higher efficiencies in a smaller spray. So there's 3.5 inches of insulation on this building, which is equivalent to 8 inches of a rigid insulation foam. So we're very efficient, and it's all signs point to being a very efficient building.
Thank you. All right, if there's nothing further, I'll say thank you very much for making the trip here and giving us the update on the Sioux North High School.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to items requiring separate discussion. Item 1 is appointment of acting chief administrative officer. That council authorizes the passing of bylaw number 21-18, being a bylaw to rescind bylaw number 34-12, being a bylaw to appoint Ann Mitchell to the position of chief administrative officer of the municipality of Sioux Lookout, and to authorize the appointment of an acting chief administrative officer, Ben Hancherick. I have a mover. Councillor Curlew, seconded by Councillor Fenelon and Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. The period between May the 4th and May the 15th is, my understanding was that her last day of work was May 4th, but, and that.
May 15th.
Okay, so from 4th to the 15th is not holiday then?
No, her last day, the last day of work is the 15th. The acting CAO comes in on the 15th.
Okay.
That's correct, 15th.
Actual in the office till the 15th. Okay. And then holidays after that or whatever. Okay, my understanding was it was holidays from the 4th to the 15th.
We're dealing with this item here, and it's
yes, I know,
yeah.
I know. But if she is not going to be here after the 4th, I would just question why the appointment of the assistant or the acting would not be on the 4th.
Because he's acting whenever, if the CAO is absent for work or vacation, it's automatic that it's already in place. We don't need to make it the 15th. He would be in place if there was a vacation, a sick day, or a travel day.
Okay, all right, that's fine, thank you.
It would be just redundant to do that. Further questions?
Yes,
Councillor Timpson.
Yes, I just wanted to know, this is an acting CAO description, not an interim CAO, and there's provision in there that this would be in place until it may be deemed necessary to have an interim. Do we have any sense of time as to how long we would want someone in an acting position who already has another department to manage?
We have decided at council to have an acting CAO instead of an interim, looking at a new CAO being in place sometime in August. It was our consideration. We've considered that, I believe, was that in closed session? Or yeah. So that's been considered? Yes. Councillor Curlew.
So, through you, Mayor Lawrence, so just in terms of point of clarification, this acting role would stand, if we all vote on that, to be for the period until a CAO, new CAO has been hired. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Which we anticipate to be the contract we're looking at in late July is the offering of the contract, and anticipating a new CAO would start sometime in August, as discussed. No further discussion. I will call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Item 2, transload facility study. That council authorizes the passing of bylaw number 23-18, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Sioux Lookout and the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation, NOHFC, for the Community Capacity Building Program, project number 8210-236, transload facility study. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Forbes. Councillor Fenelon. Sir, but you want to use the mic, Councillor? Thank you.
I brought this up because just to bring in the attention that there's other things that are going to fall, that have to fall in place along with the transload facility that council should try and keep on the forefront so that we're pushing to get other things like the east-west road corridor for this transload facility to bring business down. And it's council should be trying to push as much as they can when they're talking to politicians and other people within the not municipality, but with the governments of the day, which is going to work on the road and get it ready.
And we have been doing that advocacy. And is Vicky still here? Oh, okay. Yeah, the economic development officer could have spoken, but we have been doing that for several years and continue to do that, Councillor Fenlon. But yeah, I understand. I agree fully.
Yeah, it did come up at the economic development meeting we had, and it's very important that we try and keep it going for the municipality of Sioux Lookout.
I'm just going to ask the economic development officer just to speak to. We're talking about the transload, and Councillor Fenlon is just, I think, underscoring that we need to continue advocating for the east-west road connection.
Yes.
Could you just respond to that? Thanks.
Yes. Yes, we do. We have the support of Noront Resources, who's the largest land owner in the Ring of Fire. As well, we have an expansion of Morgan Fuels. We have First Mining Corporation and Can-Do Rail Services and CN. And they're all come to the table to work on developing a land use plan around a transload facility, and to also work towards attracting other industrial commercial businesses to the community to support that facility. With that being said, there's a real strong desire by some partners in the Ring of Fire to look at a north-south route. And we've been partnering with Sault Ste. Marie to advocate for Sioux Lookout because of our strategic location and our infrastructure, and being able to take minerals and products to Sault Ste. Marie for processing. So it's a real win-win opportunity, and with that comes many, many jobs, and also takes a large burden off the residential tax payer, and that's been our goal. And the revenue around that is important. So the Economic Development Commission has just recently met and have a strong desire to put together a team from Sioux Lookout, which would incorporate private sector, public, municipal, to start to advocate to the government and neighboring First Nations to participate. Last week I had the opportunity to meet with Watay Power, and then as well as Neskantaga, which is one of the communities that we're trying to align with us on the east-west. And there's some real positive synergies on how the attraction of that transload facility will attract many others that will require more power. So it's a real attraction for us to look at sustainable power in our community. For
Councillor Fenlon, does that answer your question?
The other north-south road is in competition with us and by far, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can answer that, Don. The provincial government came out and said that they would contribute $1 billion to the development of an east-west transportation corridor. That, and also in that promise to also start the process of developing a north-south access point. At the end of the day, they're saying there's always going to be both. At the end of the day, there will be both. But being able to get the first location up to the north is a much needed requirement for our community. The alignment of 3 First Nations on the north-south is very powerful even though they're from the same tribal council, they are aligned to sign an agreement immediately. And so we need to work closely with our First Nations that are accessing services out of our communities. So that would be Fort Hope, Scandiga, and upwards. So we do have the support of Webakwe and others that are along that line. But this is also a great access point for the Spring Pole project just outside of Cat Lake, and would allow Cat Lake to have an access road, which is very important to that community as well.
All right. Anything else, Council, on this one? No, then I will call the motion, call the vote. Oh, Councillor Forbes, yeah. Sure. Is there something in the public? Is there somebody that had a question? No. Good. Thank you. I will call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Item 3, council remuneration and expenses. That council receives the statement of council remuneration and expenses paid to members of council for the fiscal period January 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2017, as attached to the Treasurer Staff Report dated April 18, 2017, in accordance with Section 284 of the Municipal Act 2001 and Bylaw number 25-14, being a bylaw to set the remuneration paid to members of council, and policy number 1-6, council travel expenses. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Fenlon, seconded by Councillor Timpson. Councillor Timpson, you.
Yeah. It's very minor, but I just wondered if we could have the same definition of honorarium, per diem, etc., remuneration in this report as versus other reports I've seen, where per diem and honorarium are used interchangeably, and it becomes confusing of what we're talking about. So,
Madam Treasurer.
yeah.
You, Mayor Lawrence, yes, we can.
Yeah. I lost out one time because I didn't know what the proper name was. Anyway, that's all.
Anything else, Council? Councillor Curlew?
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. And so for the purpose of our audience today, can you clarify the difference between the categories? So honorarium, what does that stand for, and what does per diem stand for in relation to?
You, Mayor Lawrence, the honorariums is what is paid monthly to council. Per diems are paid to council when they attend meetings out of town. The travel is for all the travel expenses, and then under the other is actually for Northwestern Health Unit and KDSB for what they pay for our councillors to attend meetings and conferences.
Thank you. Anything further, Council? Now I will say all in favor. Carried. Item 4, the keeping of chickens. And with Council's permission, rather than read the bylaw, I'm going to suggest we just open discussion, because I spoke to the clerk, and in fact, I'm not sure if we're going to pass a bylaw tonight and rather than defeat it. I think we had directed Council to go back and do more research. It's come back in the form of a draft bylaw, and I think there will be, this is a continuing effort to get more input and refine it as we move along. And in fact, there exists an option that council may not pass a bylaw at all on this and just leave it as it is, but it's all open discussion. So if that's acceptable to council, what I will do is open the discussion on the keeping of chickens at the council table based on the report that we've had. Does that seem reasonable? Or I just worry about the conundrum of we would be defeating a bylaw at the table, or passing it, and it's not ready. I don't think we're ready. Is that fair? Agreed? Consensus? Okay. So what we will do is we will reference the chicken bylaw. I know there's members of the public that will want to speak, and you will have your opportunity. And chickens came to the municipal council table many months ago, some months ago. Well, they didn't come, but the issue came to the council table. I think there was a chicken, staff conducted a survey last year, And this is a first attempt. We directed at the council table staff to go back and do some research, what are the other communities doing, and come up with some draft information. And we've had some input from public, and we're going to receive more tonight. So having said that, on the report, council, do you want to discussion at the council table, or shall we open it to right to the floor, or council table? Councillors. Councillor Bath.
Yeah, so as I said, every other time we've had a meeting, I'm fully supportive of chickens, being in backyard chickens. I'm concerned with some of the things we're mentioning here, and one is changing the bylaw 23-11, which is a zoning bylaw. Chickens have nothing to do with the zoning bylaw. We have to be careful of that we don't get into that. The bylaw that I think we need to work on is 5006, which is being the bylaw to regulate the keeping of animals in the municipality. It's a broad bylaw, probably not broad enough. It talks about essentially dogs and cats that you can have, and everything else you can have. Doesn't mention chickens, turkeys, anything else, goats. Well, yeah, it does mention goats. So I think that bylaw covers almost everything we're looking at. It covers the fact, I think, let me step back a bit. Most of the complaints we've had about chickens are about odors and noise. I don't think there's a lot more than that really bothers people. Those are already covered in our bylaws, so either in our animal bylaw and in our property standards bylaws. So I'm wondering if we aren't sort of making a mountain out of a molehill. We've already covered most of this. We only have to discuss the regulation of how many of something you can have, but if the neighbors aren't complaining, why do you need a bylaw? So, you know, I think there's certainly some animal welfare issues we have to deal with. There's some regulatory issues, obviously, to deal with. Most of the problems that come from 2 or 3 people who are going to break the law and do something their own way anyway. If the neighbors are complaining and we stick with our odor and our noise bylaws and the accumulation of waste, we almost cover everything that's happening. 1 meter of waste is one heck of a lot of chicken shit. It actually is it's a pile 5 by 6 by 3, and I don't think I want that next to my yard. So, you know, certainly things like that we need to look at it, but it's already covered. We can build that into our 5006 without going into a lot of work, and I think that may be a better answer, because once we try to deal with chickens, I'm going to want turkeys, and Mr. Mayor Lawrence is going to want geese. Mayor Fenlon wants a goat. You know,
No, I don't want
we're going to hit every other. We're going to have to list every animal that's ever been born if we try to designate it that way. So we need to be careful we don't get too specific in what we're doing.
All right, thanks, Councillor Bath. And CIO, I know the clerk was quite involved in creating the report. Are you answering the questions or input, or would it be the clerk if we? Could be either. Okay, we'll find out. We'll find out. Okay. Councillor Fenlon?
When we first started talking about this, it's like what John said, that we were supposed to do the animal bylaw and bring it to council for some tweaking or something like that. Not something full-blown like this that has got numerous things that shouldn't even be in there, that doesn't make any sense for where we live and stuff like that. And it's got an apartment block there, I think it is, somewhere down the line here that I don't think looking online I looked at, I couldn't find one that looked something similar to that. So I don't know where they got it from. Prohibition on owning hens younger than 4 months old. I mean, the ones I picked up in Quequebeca were like 4 days old or something like that, and brought them back for people.
So just in fairness to everybody at the table, including staff, especially staff, council did direct staff to go back and find templates about what other communities are doing, et cetera. And I think that's what's being done here. And so when we discuss it, let's discuss it with an open, nobody was presenting this as if this is the fait accompli. It was being presented, here's some ideas. So we'll just, chickens is new, I think, well, maybe not all of us, it's new to me, and it's a different item but it does speak to how broad it might become, or how broad does it need to be, and where do we need to be. So good discussion. So Councillor Curlew.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I really do appreciate the depth of the report. In general, I'm for chickens and for those having their chickens. And what one choose to do with their chickens, really their prerogative. And so I think what this has brought to my attention is how the issue is very, very charged. And there's so many components to it. And so now we have a better idea what's being done elsewhere and how we have to be careful going forward, how we want to do things here. So at this point in time, this is just information as I see it. And I welcome hearing your thoughts about what you think would also work now that you've seen what other places are doing, just to balance the playing field for everybody, whether they have chickens or not.
We'll get to the public first. We'll do the council discussion first, then we'll go to the public, and then we'll come back to the council table. Councillor Southall.
I agree with the chickens. I appreciate the depth of this presentation and the information. Personally, I think it's overkill. I don't know that we need all of that. I mean, I think everything was going fairly smoothly, and there's a couple of, as usual, a couple of bad apples that spoil the whole batch. So, pardon? Okay, whatever. Anyhow, I may lean toward no roosters. I have been subject to that, and I mean 7 acres of property, and I was still getting woke up at 5 in the morning. So I may be in favor of banning the roosters, but I don't know that we have to go to this extreme. I think we should be allowed to have chickens in Sioulacout. We may want to put a limit in town, rural properties. Anyhow.
Okay. I think Councillor Timpson, you had your hand? Yep.
Yeah, I'm fully in support of chickens, and feel that you know, it is in our direction towards food security, livable places to be, but we have to make it livable for the people that live next door to people who have chickens, as well as the chicken keepers. I was talking to Gillies Township, and they had the same issue there at one point, and they just decided not to have a chicken bylaw at all. They apparently do allow chickens in the village of Heimers, but they've been able to look at the size of your property to determine how many chickens you might have. And that might be something when we do come back with a bylaw, is the number of chickens you could, if we set a max, you may be able to exceed that if you are in a fairly large property and you have no adjacent, immediately adjacent people. These are all issues I think we could look at if we do go the chicken bylaw route. But it's a matter of protecting both sides of the argument. So,
Right. Councillor Southall.
I would caution on getting too regulated. We don't want something that's going to be a nightmare to try and administer. So, I mean, set limit for in town and a set limit or no limit for rural, I think would work. I don't think we have to start getting in and permitting, and I can't see it.
Councillor Curlew.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, one thing that also stood out to me that prior to when we spoke about this last year, didn't come to mind, is what you would do as a municipality with confiscated chickens. We have no facility at this point in time, and I was talking to the CAO a little bit about that. But in the event that chickens are taken from an environment, where do we put them? We don't have any facilities right now, so this is really, really, it resonated in my mind that we have to have foresight to prepare to put these chickens that, for whatever reason, will no longer have a home. And who's going to absorb that cost? And you know, what's the next step? So I'm keen to see what we do next.
Council, further discussion? Councillor Forbes.
So my only concern is this will if my recollection is correct, this all came to us because of said bad eggs who weren't dealing with the waste, and there were other issues. So I guess my question is probably for the CAO. I just want to make sure that whatever we do, that complaint that generated this entire discussion is being or has been dealt with and will continue to be dealt with now that we're finally getting some thawing, and the problem is going to occur again. So can I get some updates on that?
CAO.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. To a point, and I say that because through property standards, of course, we can chase down, just that, the standard of the property, the waste that's there. But as far as noise complaints between the hours of our noise bylaw, that problem will still exist, right? Because obviously, as Cal mentioned, that it would be, rooster or no rooster. So, yes and no. Right, because there's not enough, without a bylaw, without this bylaw or some sort of regulation in place, and if with the other bylaws that don't address it, then we really have no teeth, right? So that decision would have to be made here. Okay, if you're not going to have a full-fledged bylaw or a chicken bylaw, then what bylaws need to be updated to address those same concerns?
So then the follow-up to that would be, and I know staff is busy, and I know this consumes a lot of Brian's time, but I really don't want to see a situation where this gets booted down the road another 4 to 6 months, and the same situation that occurred that precipitated this discussion ends up happening again. So I guess maybe for Brian, how based on what you hear tonight, how quick can this be back here for us to deal with? As far as
I think it's a bit premature because we'll give, after hearing from the public and further discussion at the table, then that question can be asked, if that's fair enough, Councillor Forbes, because he doesn't exactly know what we're going to ask him,
right, yeah.
direct him to do at this point. Councillor Bath.
Yeah, the one concern I do have about having another bylaw, and I actually forgot to mention before, is that in the bylaw we have, it's for dogs and cats. You're allowed to have 4 dogs, and I don't know how many cats, probably 4, but it's 4 dogs anyway. There's no mention in that at all about how close they should be, how much setback there should be for a run. I can have the setback for my dog right up against your fence if I like, because we don't regulate that, and that may be something we need to regulate, but it would need to regulate for all species. We can't just regulate it for the chickens. It needs to regulate for dogs also, because a dog run beside the fence is going to be just as odorous as a chicken run, I'm quite sure.
To Councillor Forbes.
Quickly, yeah.
Sure, CAO.
Just to speak to that, don't forget the report is written that the animal bylaw would be the one amended to regulate, right? So it's not a standalone chicken bylaw.
No, I realize
Right.
that, and I just wanted to make sure that that's what we're talking about, because I think there is a perception that we're coming up with a chicken bylaw.
Right.
And that's why I don't want to have a chicken bylaw.
You're right, it'd be regulated through the animal control bylaw we have now.
I just wanted to, on Councillor Forbes' point, I think that's I went to the site, and I think that the people who had a very legitimate complaint, and I don't know how if we don't have anything in our existing bylaws to any teeth, I think we need something, because the complaint and the war between neighbors needs to be settled with probably some form of regulation there. First Councillor Timpson, then Councillor Fanlon.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that I have in terms of figuring out how we might regulate this is really not knowing the chicken raising industry. I've talked to a number of people in other municipalities who do raise chicken, raise them safely, healthy, and so on, and have gathered a lot of information about it. But still, I mean, I don't know whether dogs are going to smell more than chickens, because I don't know how chickens smell if they're 2 feet from me. So, I do know that the woman who worked for the Clover Belt actually specialized in chicken keeping academically, and had asked to be involved in in the process of creating a bylaw. She is a Sioux Lookout, originally from Sioux Lookout. And perhaps we have to be talking to people who are raising chickens. Let them tell us really what it's all about, because for me, I don't know totally.
Further discussion at the council table? Councillor Fallon? Yep.
Yeah, there was one letter that we received from a lady mentioning that the province has a disagreement phase in their bylaws.
Which, I'm sorry?
The province does?
Has a what?
Sorry?
I didn't hear. You
They have a, I'm just got it here, where you can have practice disagreements, develop between farmers and their neighbors.
Oh, I see. They have a process to cover it.
Yes, and I don't know if we looked at that or not. It was a really good letter that she sent, and she had lots of good points in it that we should be looking at to see if we can alleviate the problem now as it stands, because you're not, I know the location and familiar with it, but we're not alleviating the problem for this person right now.
No. Okay. Further discussion at the council table at this point? We'll come back to the table after we go to the public. If not at this point, then I'm going to go to the public. And before we do, I'll just ask you, please stand, state your name. The clerk will have a microphone. And because I think, could I have a show of hands who wants to speak to the issue? There's half a dozen or more. So, Mr. Clerk, I think people can speak to the issue once and try not to repeat what's already been said. Just say I agree with. Keep it succinct, but state give us your information. We welcome it. So please come up to the mic and state your name, and off you go.
Do I have to use the mic? I'm pretty loud.
Just as long as it's the people that are standing, you're going to be addressing the council. You'll be addressing the council table, and we want the people behind you to be able to hear you.
Okay. So my
Normally, people do need the mic.
Okay, my name is Erin Ivaniak, and I'd like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the crowd, and elected members of Town Council for allowing me to address. A little information on myself. I am currently a nurse with the diabetes program, where I see every day firsthand the need for fresh, nutritious food. I am also in the process of obtaining a degree in agriculture with a focus on self-sustainability and addressing the global food shortage from Oxford University. I address you today as not only a lifelong resident of Sioux Lookout, but also a representative of future generations and a small, independent farmer. I must admit, when I first read these proposed recommended bylaws that were put forward, I was shocked, then I was annoyed, I was insulted, and I was angry. I took the time to draft a thoughtfully written letter to the council when they were initially looking for public input. I don't believe that it was even considered. I issued an invitation for council members to come to my farm and see firsthand what an amazing opportunity we are presented with. I felt like I had wasted my time. And just to clarify, to date, no one has accepted my offer. So, Councilwoman Simpson, if you'd like to come and experience chickens, I open my farm to you. Okay? Several of these proposed recommendations I feel are preposterous, and I would like to briefly address these. Sioux Lookout is vastly different from any other town for several reasons. We are not like Kenora, nor are we like Fort Frances or Red Lake. While we may face some similar challenges, we are different. There is no need to even look to other communities for other recommendations, as we have a wealth of knowledge in our own community. Please consider using these resources. Several of us would welcome the opportunity to be consulted. Sioux Lookout has a history rich in farming. People that I've spoken to who had historical farms here never had to have a town employee driving around, poking about, making sure that their yards were tidy and that they had no more than the allowable amount of manure. This would be an epic waste of time, of ours and yours, not to mention a valuable waste of taxpayer money, I believe. I read about requiring your neighbor's permission. Do we currently need our neighbor's permission to allow our toddlers to play outside? Toddlers can get loud, toddlers can get messy, toddlers can potentially be destructive.
The regulations regarding the construction and maintenance of the coop. Part of the fun is designing and building the coop. This also speaks to the uniqueness of the townspeople. Extremely limiting the size, shape, or space of your chicken coop would not fit in all yards. Some yards are different shapes, sizes, with different permanent fixtures or proximity to neighbors. Also, permanent structures would potentially limit the option of chicken tractors for even grazing. If anything, these would fall under the purview of a building inspector, in my opinion, not the bylaw officer. The prohibition of the sale of eggs, meat, manure, or other materials. To me, this is limiting and bizarre. Anyone who has ever farmed, knows a farmer, or gardens knows that manure makes amazing fertilizer. Why not promote new and unique entrepreneurialism in our fine community? Thinking outside of the box and shopping locally should be encouraged. Chicken manure is a great source of nitrogen-rich fertilizer, great for vegetable gardens, flower beds, and lawns. Also, according to the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Farming, I believe is the title, you can sell eggs from your farm gate with no advertising. It also allows a small provision for the sale of poultry from your farm gate. Prohibition of slaughter. According to the Ministry of Agriculture, you are legally allowed to cull your animals on your own property, provided the following are followed. The meat is for yours or your immediate family's consumption. You are not taking the meat off of your property, and you are not using it to feed anyone else. You can also have a butcher come to your farm and butcher the animals, provided again that you are the only ones eating it. Culling the hens for meat is a natural part of the process. Why make people pay even more on top of the cost of purchasing hens, buying the feed, paying the proposed licensing fees, and proposed yearly fee per hen? Why not be part of the food solution? Let's not also forget that a large majority of our residents are hunters. Do you recommend that they live trap the moose and take it to a vet to be properly euthanized? Of course not. The hunters process their meat at home, in backyards, sheds, and garages. It can often be a time when people come together to help one another to make sure that they have their meat for the winter. When I spoke with the nearest vets, and their replies were as follows. The human consumption of chemically euthanized animals is life-threatening and prohibited. It would cost you between $175 and $300 to take an average-sized chicken to the vet to be euthanized. They cannot and will not return the carcass to you for consumption. As for taking the birds to an abattoir, he will not process one or two chickens. There are certain dates only that he will process chickens. You could potentially have to wait months for the dates that he does this. This is due in part to the fact that it is quite expensive and labor-intensive for him to set up his facility to process the birds. It is not cost-effective for him to do one or two at a time. The cost is $7.50 per bird plus packaging. This is all assuming that you can get the live birds to emote. This puts the purpose of raising chickens for an inexpensive source of nutrition for your family out of focus. The prohibition on owning hens younger than 4 months. Raising a hen from a chick is educational, fun, and teaches many wonderful lessons to our children. You will have a very hard time finding chickens for purchase that are older than 4 months, and if you could, the cost is not worth it. I contacted more than a dozen local and not so local chicken sellers. For a day-old chick, you're averaging $1.75 to $3.49 for a specialty breed. For a ready-to-lay hen, you are looking at between $18 and $20. Again, not a cost-effective choice for most people. Hatching or purchasing day-old chicks provides a great opportunity to educate children in our schools. The local schools have historically hatched chicks in their classrooms. I've spoken with many of the parents of these children, and they have nothing but positive things to say about the experience, the learning experience for their children, the experience that they had in being able to speak with their children about that. The cleanliness of the property. 3 cubic meters of waste is a lot of waste. Coop owners typically will smell it way before their neighbors do, and they won't want to live with it, therefore keeping it clean on a regular basis. If we're going to look at this point, we also have to look at the fact that there are yards in town that look like the aftermath of a war, and they don't even have chickens. Why not address them about the cleanliness of their yards or the smell from the mounds of rotting garbage? The biosecurity issues. Many of us, when we looked into getting into chickens, we did a lot of time and research because this is an investment. You don't want to just plop them in a backyard and let anything at them. So you do a lot of investment of appropriate housing and fencing and making sure that they're going to survive. I don't feel that limiting these options, because there are a lot of great creative options, whether it be poultry fencing, pig fencing, pallets, there's all kinds of amazing ideas out there for the biosecurity issue. The licensing and enforcement regime. One of the biggest concerns in Sioux Lookout is the attraction and retention of residents. Life in Sioux Lookout is remote and expensive. Food, gas, housing, other sundries. People get creative about how to sustain themselves. Now you want to police us and charge money for this. So much so that it takes this option off the table. Why can't we just be left alone? The majority of people with chickens have never, nor will they ever cause a problem. If and when an issue arises, deal with it as a singular incident. Why punish all of the good people or discourage new people from even starting? In summation, the town council has been presented with a unique opportunity to help the people that elected them. Please, seriously consider the consequences of these proposed recommendations and changes to a bylaw. Carefully consider the information gathered, but also put it into a context that fits Sioux Lookout's uniqueness. Reach out to the local people that have chickens as to what they recommend. We have an opportunity to pave the way for future generations. Above all else, again, please consider the information from the local farmers that has been brought forward. Why try and fix something that isn't broken? I believe it would be a waste of time and resources. Help your citizens be part of the solution of the worsening food shortage and allow us to be an example for other communities in our area. I'm not saying that we oppose any or all guidelines, but please be reasonable. We want to encourage self-sustainability and promote a healthy local food system. Respectfully, Aaron Ibama.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Here's a bylaw for you. We generally discourage applaud or booing or whatever, because if we allow applause, then the next thing we get is lots of jeering and whatever. So thank you very much for your presentation. Just for the audience. And I don't have a particular order here. Hands up, who's next? Thank you. And same thing, state your name and your case, and try not to be repetitive. You can agree with the previous speaker, disagree, but don't say the same. Okay.
My name is Michael O'Brien. I can't hold mic, so I'll just start shaking. So if you don't hear, just say something. I just wanted to highlight on some of the councillors what they said. And it's like, why create a new bylaw for something that already exists? Maybe we'll just tweak the old one. A chicken, a cat, or a dog, what's the difference? A dog is barking, somebody will do something about it. The chickens are making noise, somebody will do something about it. So why do we put this off all by itself? And that was mentioned, if I get a goat, what am I going to do? You know, we're going to start all over again. If there are some bad apples, which were mentioned, deal with them. Don't deal with everybody. Okay? We're trying to sustain ourselves, you know, buy local. The food is expensive here. Go down to Dryden, you'll see the difference. So we're trying to help ourselves. We're trying to give us eggs. We're trying to give us meat. You did a lot of work, but the information that came out of it, I haven't measured this room, but maybe 6 chickens. And that's just not worth it. Can't do it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Next hand, please. Yeah, I've got,
Hi, my name is Sherry Crispino.
you.
I'm a citizen of Sioux Lookout.
Can everybody hear?
My name is Sherry Crispino. I'm a citizen of Sioux Lookout.
And I just want to ask you, how many complaints are you talking about to come up with a full-blown investigation to this level?
Actually, you're invited to speak, but not enter into debate at the council table. You can.
Okay.
You may
Well,
present
I
your-
just wanted to know how many are we talking about, and then how many complaints have not been dealt with under the current bylaws? And that's kind of, I guess, I'll leave it for you to contemplate if you can't answer it right now.
Thank you. We understand your point.
I'm representing Andrea Habinski.
State your name, please. Thanks.
I'm Ann Saltel, and I'm representing Andrea Habinski with the Clover Belt Local Food Co-op. Andrea has her master's in animal and poultry science, and her thesis was on laying hen welfare and behavior. She has written a response to the points potential for the bylaw. I'm not going to read it out because Aaron succinctly covered most of them, but Andrea does have a few other points, so I will just hand each of you.
You can give it to the clerk. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
That's it, Ann? Yep. Okay, thank you.
My name is Mike Quince, and it's great to have an open session here with council. Usually I see councils as a...
This is not just a correction. This is not a, is it an open session? I suppose it's it's a regular meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's great to see that the public is taking an interest in it. I like John Bass's comments about odor, noise, and is really the biggest concern in a meter of square meters lots. I also appreciate the effort that Brian McKinnon has done on this, and it's sometimes we seem to shoot the messenger, unfortunately, but this isn't the case. Brian's come up with some comments here and there, and on page 2, on his April 18th, he says, none of the communities which responded, ... have any specific licensing program on guidelines with respect to the welfare of chickens, and enforcement is on a complaint-driven basis. We're getting back to where, there's a real need for there. The probation, and I'm going to repeat sometime a few things because I think it's important to emphasize. The idea of having, prohibition of owning anything under 4 months, that's where you start. And like the comments made, it's pretty hard to get a hen that's producing, and it takes sometimes up to 6 months for a hen to produce. There was a group of us that went down, the province set up some farming group, I think provincial representatives in the agricultural business to Oxdrift last June or sometime I think early fall or late summer, and it was a really interesting session, and we learned a lot. And the idea of having, the province has really looked at this in terms of trying to deal with amounts and sizes, and again, it was repeated that you can sell eggs from at the front of at the end of the lane, and you can have up to 300 chickens before you need permits. They establish 300 chickens more, then you'd have to have a permit, and there's closer scrutiny and regulation. But apart from seeing a lot of different people that have a lot of different points of view, I think we all learned a lot in terms of learning a bit more how to deal with our chickens. And like this young lady said, when you're going to invest the kind of time and effort to have chickens, you're going to try to do it properly because they can die quite easily as well. So you're going to do it properly to be that much more efficient from what you're putting in. The idea, like Brian said, feed at $25 to $50 or annual per chicken, 5 to 15. Now I know Brian threw that in because he's trying to gather information, but if we really look at $1, $98 to $3 for a chicken, then you got to put the kind of feed it in. It's much higher than you're going to get at a grocery store. The reason we do it is because we want our children to grow up with that experience. We also like the end product, and it is probably more expensive, but that's immaterial because of all the wonderful experience you have raising the chickens. And basically, we've done about 50 chickens a year, so that's a fair number of chickens. And we used to harvest them. You know, there's a lot to it. So I want to go back also briefly here to it was to correct you on time scheduled. It was June 15th, 2016 that Councillor Timpson brought up the idea of council passing a resolution number CL053-15 calling on the Government of Ontario to increase chicken farmers of Ontario exempt flock limit from 300 to 4,000 broiler birds. I don't even know where that came from, but I jotted it down because, you know, 300, fine, but 4,000? Now you're talking about farming. That's true farming. Okay, so we went through a process over closer to a year and a half ago on should the municipality develop a chicken bylaw. A third of the people said yes, so that means 2/3 said either no or undecided. So that's 2/3 of people saying we're getting a little bit too far ahead. And I think you heard that from people here. Should the municipality investigate further? 25% said yes. So you're looking at 75% saying no or undecided. There's a significant number said that the municipality should not become involved in this matter. And I think we've heard briefly from council, generally speaking, you know, we're dealing with odor, we're dealing with potential noise. Let's not go too far on this, and whether you can do it through the, you know, the same bylaws you're doing dogs and cats and that kind of thing. But I understand what you're saying, Mayor, in terms of, you know, what do we deal with when there's complaints, and I think somehow all the bylaws are essentially complaint driven, and I can understand that. But let's look at something more reasonably. City Councilor said, City of Thunder Bay said no to chicken bylaw. That's what I got to understand. They looked at it, they said that, you know, we don't want to get into it. And finally, nothing in the report really discusses variations of what we have in our community. Like if you look outside the window, you know, maybe 5 chickens and 5 hens and no roosters. It makes sense because of proximity of people. But we've got Alcona, we've got Drayton Reserve, lots of land, and then beyond that. And of course, beyond that, in the natural resource area, you can do anything related to agriculture. But basically, I think the common sense I'm feeling, what I've heard from council, is a lot of common sense, and I appreciate with them speaking and making their comments known. And I think after you hear all these sorts of things, and it's, you know, I'm glad to hear that it doesn't seem we're going to get into a specific bylaw, but maybe some tweaking here and there along with the dogs and cats. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Next hand, sorry. Next, any more hands that want to come to the mic? Yep, please come.
My name is Yvon Goulet. I'm a citizen of Sioux Lookout. I've been here 5 years. Good evening. I just want to state about the noise and the smell. I do live on Front Street. I do have five chickens, 5 hens, and my new neighbors that moved in 2 years ago just found out we had chickens. There barely any noise, and the smell, I take care of my coop. There is no smell. And I open the gate, they follow my kids around. My daughter and my son, they play with them. They pick them up, pet them. They're actually better than dogs. Because dog poop, I've had 2 dogs. It stinks. And I used to be a professional dog trainer, kennel manager. I picked up a lot of poop. And it stinks. What do you do with all that? It's big garbage bags. So that's my concern. Please put that in mind. And if you want to come and visit my yard, by all means. And yeah, and I get fresh eggs every morning. So, all right.
Thank you very much. Any other hands?
my family's been here for a few generations. We've had chickens, and we've all kept chickens. My uncle and my grandparents kept chickens, eggs, and broiler birds, mostly for the healthy end product. That's kind of the motivation. And then the family involvement and stuff. I think everybody spoke, said the same thing. My wife had the same question I had. We didn't talk about it beforehand, but her question was one I had for council, and it's not a debate issue, it's a simple question. How many complaints were coming in to drive this involvement and effort and hours worked and wages to bring it to where we are today, when we have so many other bigger issues in this community? We have not grown our population, closed stores on Front Street. The complaints, I'd like to just see a graph or something. See, here's before chicken complaints, and the biggest complaint of the community before that. And then I want to see what the biggest complaint in the community is now, and how it kind of scales on the chicken poop smell and chicken squawking sounds. I really don't think it's an issue in the community, and I bet you it's isolated to a half a dozen. Am I wrong? Am I way off the lunch on this?
Just carry on with, you may present, but we're not going to enter into a debate or discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, so the question, one of the questions I want to answer.
If you'd like to debate at the council table, Mr. Crispino, you're free to run for election and get a seat at the table. For now, you're invited to speak to the issue on the agenda and take your seat. Yep, that's correct. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'd really like to see some changes in this community. I'm sure a lot of people would. I just didn't, in my wildest dreams, think that it was going to be about the keeping of chickens when it's like this self-sustainability and the involvement with your family, animal husbandry, or Canadian culture right to the roots, right? This is why we inhabited this land, is because we were raising our own animals and feeding ourselves before the grocery stores were erected and brought in food from so many miles away at such a high price. My question was just simple. What's driving this debate? And if it was just a few people maybe doing bad things, then our noise bylaw and maybe some of the other bylaws covered it already or might need some small tweaking. But the idea of me now being a chicken farmer, having to pay a fee for each one of my chickens, like the stuff that was tabled, it got us here and probably a whole other bunch of people that are just spinning in circles at their own homes wondering about this. Chickens aren't the only animals that have been raised in this community for the last 50 years. Rabbits, big one, lots of people are doing that. There's been plenty of mushing teams in this community as well, dog mushers who had 30, 40 dogs and they paid their permits and stuff like that. How did we get to this when population growth has been stagnant for so many years and no one is talking about what we can do here in the next 10 years so that my taxes go from $8,000 a year to something manageable?
You can stick to the chicken issue. Are you done now? Yeah. Thank you very much.
My name is Patty Everson, and I would hope that going forward the council will take every step they can to promote food security and individual ingenuity. And I also hope that, I don't know what the process is for complaints, but I hope that going forward, chicken keepers will be informed when there are complaints so that we can correct our faults. Thanks.
Thank you. Further hands, comments? Yes, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Tekla Rundle, and I think I'm the last one. I'm going to finish on a positive note. Reading the proposed changes to the bylaws freaked me out and just made me furious. And I'm so relieved to hear the councillors kind of echo my concerns that this is overkill. And I'm just so glad that I feel like I'm more on the same page with you guys. And I'm hoping that whatever changes and amendments come to the animal control bylaw reflect kind of what the comments that I heard in response to that. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'll just check if there's anybody else. Anybody else? And if you're going to speak again, just not to the short. Yep. Not the same.
In terms of the smell, myself personally, I am outside of Sioux Lookout limits. I'm here today with them in support of, but I don't raise just chickens. I have over 100 chickens, I have turkeys, I have pigs, and expansion for cows and goats, and there is no smell. So it is manageable on a large scale as well as small 4 to 8 chickens. That's all.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you just told us you're not a citizen of Sioux Lookout? Or you?
Well, I live here, I work here, but logistically where my little farmhouse is situated, it's like off of the chunk of Sioux Lookout.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what the regulations are. You mean you're within the municipal boundary?
No.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you. All right, I'm going to bring it back to the council table now for discussion at the council table among council. Go ahead, Councillor Bath, then Councillor Timpson.
I just wanted to make it clear, we heard a lot of comments from the audience in particular that these are going in a bylaw, and I want to make it clear that this is not what the clerk did. The clerk gave us instances of what other communities have done, and I don't think we want to tar him with a tar and feather Brian for doing that, and that's what we asked him to do. But unfortunately, people think this is what the bylaw was going to be, and that's absolutely not the case. And it's how things sometimes get twisted a bit. So Brian, if I went that way, I'm sorry.
His skin is now thick. Councillor Timpson and then Councillor Curlew.
I really appreciate all the input, and I'm learning a lot, and I'll try to take a chicken tour at your invitation, Yvonne and Aaron. I guess one of the reasons I think it could be very useful to have some sort of bylaw or policy is simply because this could come back in a few years, and you may have a council or an environment in which people just decide, okay, no chickens, period, just forget them. And that could be worse than what we're doing now. So I really do think it's worthwhile to go through this exercise and look at what regulations will work, and so that people are protected on both sides of the argument. I know that chickens, it's coming up. It came up in Toronto. It comes up in Thunder Bay. I mean, I'm not sure if Thunder Bay allows chickens, or they just don't have any regulation about it. But do they allow them? No chickens at all. And I would be afraid that if we didn't regulate it properly and monitor it, that we'd end up with, in a few years, coming back, no chickens, period, anywhere. And that would not be that's not what we want. So I would think some protection there, so that in the regulatory process, so that we will have chickens for perpetuity.
Councillor Curlew.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, and thank you. Again, I echo the sentiments shared before by council that we are not against chickens being held in people's yards. I fondly remember visiting on 2 occasions my nearest neighbor who does keep chicken, and as a homeschooler, taking my kids there and getting them involved in the process from the very beginning to when they move on. So thank you to Curtis September for being a good chicken owner and schooling my children over the years on the experience. But I also want to bring that back to the point of this is for information so that we know best how to move forward. And what I take away from this is that you, the constituents, you, the public, are just as informed as our research department. So I thank you very much for what you brought and your experiences and the way in which you've been doing this over the years. And we don't take that lightly. So we really appreciate the engagement process that this has drawn you into. And thank you again for your learning.
Councillor Southwell.
I just want to state that I agree with Councillor Bath. We asked staff to come back to us with information, and that's what we got. and I appreciate all the comments from the public also, but this gives us a big picture of extremes and of how to accommodate members of the public, and hopefully we come up with a good mix out of that. So,
Council, any further? So we don't have a motion on the floor. We do have one of my concerns would be whether it's one complaint or 20. I'm going to ask staff how can we and I did visit the site, the complainant site, and saw, and they had legitimate, absolutely legitimate complaints that had to do with odors, that had to do with flies, that had to do with many of the issues that are here. How, if we do nothing tonight, do we have staff do we? And I think you've answered that. How do we handle that situation so that we're not leaving people who have? I understand everything that's been said here, and I appreciate absolutely, but how do we handle those 1 or 5 complaints? How do we do that and satisfy those citizens?
Through you, Your Worship, you would have to make the amendments to the animal control bylaw to address exactly that.
We would have to make some amendments to the animal control bylaw. Right now, there are no teeth for.
That's right.
Because if there's a bad egg in the crowd, we can't throw it out. We can't deal with it right now.
That's correct.
Councillor Forbes.
So then, I would like to ask Brian to answer my original question before we heard from him.
Yep. Which, go ahead, restate it, Councillor Forbes.
Just, based on what you've heard tonight, Mr. Clerk, how, in your current workload, how fast do you think this can come back to us to deal with?
Well, I guess, Councillor Forbes, I'm going to say the same thing. We still haven't given any direction from the council table to staff as to where the direction we want to go in. Yeah. So if you want to answer or not, I see Councillor Bath has a point. Councillor Bath first,
so
yeah.
Just to maybe clarify, the 5006 does have an offensive odor statement in it. It's in there. So it's already there. So if I don't like the smell of your chicken, then I have to complain. And if I complain, the municipality should do something about it.
Go ahead,
Your Worship, but how do you quantify that? So I walk up as a bylaw officer and I say, your neighbor thinks it stinks. Well, I don't prove it. Well, no, I'm just getting, so now if you had you had something measurable as to the amount. Well, I'm not, right? But at least if you have something of measurable, now you've got something. You can say, it's almost like noise. It just becomes an argument, right? If you have something quantifiable in front of you, which can't be all that difficult to do, but just a note on Councillor Forbes' question, pretty tough for Brian to answer if we don't know as many. What do you want to see? Like, do you want to see what the amendments would look like with some of the comments that were made at the table? I'm not saying this is it. It's up to you guys, but what would really help in this situation with staff to answer that type of question or bring something back to you? Make it as simple as you want. Like the question or the statements that were made here. No roosters, set limits, quantities based on property size, no licensing. If you want to see something as simple as that, and then again with maybe with the some sort of noise and odor issue or quantity for waste, then it's measurable, and then we can give you a good answer as to how quickly that can come back.
Councillor Forbes or Councillor Bath or Councillor Fallon. Yep.
Why can't we have staff call the Ministry of Agriculture and see what they have to say on mitigating this with the dispute?
On which? Oh, the dispute mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's their policy.
Okay.
And
I'll let Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I did speak with OMAFRA this afternoon, their poultry expert. The particular remedy you're recommending is having to do with people who actually have farms and that type of thing. We're talking about the keeping of backyard chickens, and to the best of my knowledge and from what was conveyed to me this afternoon, they don't deal with those types of disputes.
Any bright ideas at the council table? We're always looking for good ideas. Councillor Southall, here we go.
I'm just saying that not everything is based on complaint. Like, I mean, did I feel like complaining at 5 o'clock in the morning when I had to get up and close my window? Yeah, I did, but I didn't. And was it annoying? Yeah, it was. So, I mean, it's not all complaint driven. You know, you don't want to offend your neighbors, you don't want confrontation, but if there was something in place that could, within reason.
Maybe it's a dispute resolution mechanism. Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I like what the acting CAO has suggested, that we look at some very simple, no roosters, setbacks, noise and odor, quantities for waste, etc. And perhaps the way to do that is to just withdraw this resolution or withdraw this report, and
it's on the table for discussion. We don't, Mr. Clerk, we're just discussing. We didn't pass this.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that's correct. There is no motion on the floor at the moment. It's just for discussion and to provide direction to staff.
Yeah, okay. And just provide direction to staff to come back with something.
With another of the simplified draft.
A simplified draft, and then we'll take a look at it. I do think, though, that it's somewhere the word chickens has got to be in there so that we have something about chickens, so that in the future we have a way of dealing with it, so that we don't have in 5-10 years a council that just says no chickens, period.
I don't think there's any guarantee. I think any council in the future will do what they will do.
Well, they can, but we need to have a mechanism documented to deal with it. Because
bylaws can be rescinded and replaced. I don't think you can guarantee the actions of a future council.
No, of course not. But we need to have a way in which the bylaw officer can enforce what we
Sure, yeah, that's different
so
than,
that
than limiting
it works.
future councils.
Yeah.
Councillor Curlew.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Lawrence. And on the point that was presented by the CAO, so if we were to go that route and, succinctly ask for this to be simplified, what we could also ask is for that to be compared with 5006 and see how we can make those adjustments from that angle.
Councillor Beth.
Our property standards deal somewhat like this. Like when your grass grows over 10 centimeters or whatever it is, you have to cut it, or somebody comes and cuts it for you. The municipality cuts it for you. And maybe what to sort of speak to what Acaseo is saying, maybe that's a way to do it. Maybe there has to be a size of your manure pile, your waste pile. I don't quite know how you would do that, but maybe that's a start. Obviously, if there's a big, I'll use the 3 cubic meter one pile, it's way too big. So maybe we can do that by having an actual size stated. I don't think that's how chicken poop accumulates. It accumulates all over, but stuff that's coming out of the coop certainly would be piled somewhere, and maybe that's the way.
So.
We need something that makes it easy or easy and enforceable.
So perhaps Councillor Fenelon? Yep.
They should think about the people that have chickens composting most of it, and if they can't compost it or they don't want to compost it, then they have to take it to the landfill site on a regular basis, weekly basis or every 2 weeks, to stop the accumulation of.
So I'm gonna try to sum up here and get councillors. I think the feeling I have is that we need to do something. I don't think it can be completely unregulated, but we may be able to use, as I think we're doing, the existing bylaws and tweak them. But we must address some of the key issues, and I think whether it's one complaint or unsaid complaints, there were real issues regarding odor, amount of manure, et cetera. So I think there's, and Mr. Clerk and CAO, I think you would have picked up the 4 or 5 main issues, and you would have picked up a lot from the public about who are here, and these are chicken owners, not chicken complainants too. So there's a block here, and we have to address the whole community in future situations without being onerous or over-regulating, but perhaps come back, the direction to staff would be to come back with something as simple as possible that you think addresses the key issues that we've seen complained about, and doesn't over-address things, but addresses also the concerns expressed by chicken owners, and work within those limits. Come back with another draft for discussion or another report, and maybe you can suggest in there the wording of a bylaw. It's not going to come back as a bylaw and be passed. I'm quite confident of that. There'll be further debate and discussion. Is that direction? It's fairly general. It's clear. It's vague but clear. Okay.
Brian may have a comment.
Yeah.
Councillor Timpson first, then I'll go to the clerk.
Yeah, just to clarify what I was saying before, I think Councillor Bath used the word enforceable regulations that we can enforce, so that if there is an infraction, then it can be corrected. That's, yep, good.
And one of my other concerns would be if we have one complaint or we have 5 right now, and they're legitimate complaints, we have to have a way of addressing them before those people are forced to have another summer of inaction, right? That we have to be able to somehow, and maybe can council give direction to in any way that's not covered in a bylaw or not? Probably not. Go out there and be tough.
You can, but I'm not sure how much. Well, yeah, that's not going to hold any water.
And maybe you just have to rake through the existing animal control bylaw and use any clause you can in there that might assist. Mr. Clerk, you had something you wanted to say. Yeah.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence. The common themes in terms of complaints have been related to smell, odor, accumulation of waste, and so on and so forth. What hasn't come up, and it is something that does come up, it's something that I know OMAFRA is very concerned about, and that's the general welfare. Does council care if chickens are left to freeze in the coop in the winter? Is that something you want to address? Do you care if chickens are malnourished and someone calls and complains, my neighbor's chickens are malnourished? Do we just say, too bad? Or is that something you want to address?
Can I ask what do we do with dogs and cats right now? Do we have any such similar clauses?
There's provincial legislation and criminal legislation dealing with those types of animals.
So is there not with other animals? I would think there would be animal. Maybe next, you can come back in your report. I think that would be come back and just give us some advice on that. Councillor Bath, did you?
The one concern, and I think it speaks to what Clerk was saying, is and that's exactly one of the things I thought about, is animal welfare. If you've got people who aren't looking after their yards, they're obviously not looking after the chickens. And the same things with dogs. And certainly there are criminal charges against people who do it with dogs and cats and pets, and certain to some extent agricultural animals. And I don't quite know where the rules fall with agricultural animals. They certainly aren't nearly as tough as they are with pets. When you abuse a pet and leave it, then you are fined quite significantly. But certainly people do abuse animals. And the agricultural industry doesn't like to see us talk about that because they abuse animals quite often when they kill them. Many of the slaughter sites are not very, very humane. And that's one of the issues we have, and the killing of chickens is a perfect example of that. If we want people to kill chickens in their backyard, we obviously want them to do it in a humane way. And that's certainly not putting them on the block and whacking their head off with an axe. There are better ways, and I don't think when your neighbor's kids are looking over the fence, you don't want them to see that, or certainly the parents don't want them to see that. So we need to deal with that kind of thing. Certainly we all did that in the past when we lived on farms. You could cut the heads off with an axe, and nobody really cared.
Could you? Sorry, I'd like the audience to thank you.
Over the fence, my kids are looking over. You your fence and watching you do that, and I don't want that. I don't want them to see that. So that's something we need to address. So we're talking about having the meat for the chickens, which is great. Go for it. But we need to have a humane way to deal with it, and that's partly, I don't know how we fit that into the bylaw, but that wouldn't be that hard to do, actually. Yeah, have to do it.
I think we need, I think clearly we need to keep it as simple as possible and use other legislation that's already in place to cover these things, yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that always that concerns me on this is chickens, and then, okay, what about bees? What about mink? What if we're so specific to chickens, then we'll fall into a bottomless, never-ending spiral of having to address every identified animal. Councillor Curlew.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, has there been a letter written yet to the offending chicken owner requesting the cleanup, addressing the issue from a citizen standpoint?
I'm not sure how far we want to go into a discussion on that particular at the council table. I don't think it's appropriate. I'm sorry, it's against. Yeah.
Yeah, just to answer that question, have we approached it from a general communication at this point in time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I know we're being vague, but what I see happening is another report coming back to the council table, honing in, taking into account the discussion from the public and the discussion at the table, keeping it as simple as possible and more directed for further debate and input. If that's fair enough, staff, are you good with that, CIO? All right, so I'm going to close off the discussion on item 5 on the agenda, and maybe take just a 3-minute health break and come back to move on to item 10. Thank you very much, audience. first, second, and third time and considered for passing by council. Bylaw number 21-18, being a bylaw to rescind bylaw number 3412, being a bylaw to appoint Ann Mitchell to the position of CAO for the municipality and to authorize the appointment of an acting CAO, Ben Hanchrook. Bylaw number 23-18, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute the agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Sioux Lookout and Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation for the Community Capacity Building Program, Project 8210-236 Transload Facility. And bylaw number 2418, being a bylaw to adopt, being a bylaw to adopt policy number 113, use of corporate resources for election purposes. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Southall. All in favor? Carried. No notices of motion to reconsider. Outside resolutions, none. And we'll do a council roundtable activity report, starting with Councillor Fenlon.
Attended the beach station,
Thank
at
you.
the railway station, and there was complaints about the venue that we had there. People didn't think it was going to be like that. We thought it would be a discussion like around the table here where they had time to talk. That was one of the complaints. The other complaint is the noise in the building. The building is not made for a lot of people talking all at the same time because you can't hear them. So those are the two complaints, and wondering if they're going to come back to council again at some point in time, the beach and the other remediation thing that's going on there.
You're asking,
Yeah.
but we're not, you're reporting on your activities. We're not going to debate the town beach. I'm sure it's coming back to the council, absolutely.
Okay. We had attended an EDC meeting, which was, there's lots on the table. One of them I mentioned was the East-West Road corridor and some other stuff. There's some good things coming that are in the works still.
Great. Councillor Bath.
Pretty quiet. I did usual PACE meeting. One thing it's nice it's happening at PACE now. There seems to be a little more activity up here. Pickle Lake, I think we did the two loans in Pickle Lake, and Sioux Lookout one loan. So it's starting to move away, move our way with the Dryden Central area, which is good to see. Attended LCC monthly meeting and attended the start of the Lac Sewer Forest Management Plan. That's for the 2021-2031 period. That's just started. They just done their review of their terms of reference. The next meeting is in May. It'll broaden a little bit. There'll be a little more to deal with there. I stopped in and visited the new business on Front Street, the Bark Barn. Congratulated them for opening, and they are going to have a grand opening where you'll get to snip the ribbon. I asked them to make sure they let us know. Barbecue season, they said. And I also heard the same comments that Councillor Fenlon heard about the venue and the noise.
Councillor Timpson. Thank you, Councillor Bath.
Yeah, I've been fairly busy. Started with the hospital board at early in the month, and a seminar on community engagement on systemic racism put on by the province, the Women's Symposium at the end of March. I attended a workshop in Dryden on the Trillium Foundation had put on some of their new initiatives and funding available. Wasn't directly council related, but might be at some point. And I attended the session, the community engagement of the LIN, and I attended both sessions, both in my position as a board member and as well as a private citizen. And of course, long-term care was the overwhelmingly popular initiative that they wanted LINs to deal with. The last 2 days, I've been at the health transformation talks between Anishinaabe Nation, the tribal councils, and the hospital, and SLIFNA, and that was very interesting. There's going to be some interesting new directions in the north in the next probably decade. It's going to take a while. We had a meeting of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee yesterday, and I have been tasked with looking at some of the policies that might be looked at for alteration to accommodate reconciliation. I'm on the CAO Recruitment Steering Committee, and task force, rather, I guess we're called. Select, whatever. Anyway, and attended the Town Beach open house on last week, I believe it was. I too have received many comments that people would like to have a different venue. The Environment Committee is going to be discussing that tomorrow night. Some people feel that there were questions that just weren't answered, and that that everybody in the room should be able to hear the same answer. Whatever the question is, that everybody should hear it, and everybody should have the chance to ask the questions that everybody hears. So that will be a discussion of the Environment Committee tomorrow night. And that's about it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Timpson. Councillor Southall.
Basically the same as Donnie, the beach project and economic development. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes.
The same meetings as you guys, the Town Beach one. Once a new cafeteria is built, we'll probably have all those meetings in there, so since we put in money for that. And of course, the special meeting about the process to recruit and hire a new CAO, attended that, and that was about it for me for the month.
Thank you, Councillor Curlew.
In March, beginning of March, working with our staff lead, economic development, Lisa Blanchard, and our advisory committee, local advisory committee here on the Diverse Voice for Change initiative. It's wrap up program, Willard Symposium, and working with the team to put that onto the community, which was very well attended. And following that, the next day, attended with the mayor the grade 10 civics high school class to talk about municipal politics and what that entails. And in the mayor's absence, he has asked me to attend the Leading Youth Anti-Racism gathering in Pelican Falls. Following that, also the Confederation College President Community Visit at the Confederation College site here in Sioux Lookout, ending of March as well, to represent the municipality, and that discussion focused mainly on the programs that are offered by the institution and what their desire to keep the community relationship and partnership strong and positive for the years going forward. In April, attended, of course, the special council meeting, and then sitting on the steering committee. First meeting I was not able to attend. However, offering suggestions to the process so far, was able to contribute towards that. And April 11th to 13th, I traveled to Toronto for the Ontario Good Roads board meeting, where I participated in the policy committee and the board meeting itself. There are three things that the board voted on in looking at the three main committees. There's policy, there's member service, and the executive committee. And what was decided on the executive committee, recommended to the board, and the board voted on, was to apply to its mortgage $150,000, $100,000 to be transferred from unallocated reserve to asset management and informatics reserve, and $40,000 to be transferred from unallocated reserve to the education development reserve. From the policy committee, which I sit on, we endorsed the advocacy strategy for the 2018 on Ontario general election. And on a member service board, we recommended and the board approved 3 appointments. Mike Henderson to the Rhodes School as the director, Michael Tao to the Rhodes School director position for 3 years, and then the reappointment to the director of Snow School for 3 years, Paul Johnson. So that was reporting out from that committee's work. And on the 17th, participated in teleconference for an upcoming webinar that FCM is putting on called Unlocking the Power of Diverse Voices in Politics. That will be taking place May 16th, and so the preparatory work for that, I will be presenting on a panel with 4 other women from across Canada and looking at the power of diverse voice in increasing the representation of women on councils and boards and commission. So talking about the rural, northern, remote kinds of experience and what we bring to the table in this project. So it's a continuation of the Diverse Voice for Change initiative and what we've learned from that to be able to apply to the national toolkit that's being developed right now. And thank you very much again in terms of media exposure to the Sioux Lookout Bulletin for its very, very great coverage throughout the program and for encapsulating it all at the very end of it. We also had an opportunity to interview on CBC Thunder Bay Radio about it. It was trending on Twitter, and there were many, many likes for the entire period. We also had the culmination of our guest speaker writing an article about her experience coming to Sioux Lookout in the Toronto Star. So for our community, we're looking for a CAO, and that's one of the biggest plugs we have had in a long time. Free publicity that will be very good for when we are searching for a CAO, that our community will be, already in the minds of, 17 million people, that we do great things and that this is really a place of opportunity to come. Also, regrets, Poverty Reduction Strategy Hiring Committee had a meeting to hire you. I was not able to participate in that. Town Beach update and regular Board of Health board meeting I was not able to attend as I was traveling elsewhere for the municipality. And last but not least, I received 2 community complaints, one regarding social media and inappropriate comments, and also one lost dog for out on the highway. And those are my activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Curlew. I'll just briefly attended the Watay Power announcement, the $1.6 billion project, which is a very significant project for all of northwestern Ontario, and I think for the communities to the north and Sioux Lookout. Participated in a regional food distribution meeting at the Lac Seul Event Centre and attended the usual meetings of council, special meetings, and Town Beach meeting. Chamber of Commerce attended their monthly meeting as usual, and committee meetings. And here we are back again in the cycle to the regular council meeting. Thank you. So I'll now call for a motion to move into closed session to discuss matters of a general nature, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board per Municipal Act 2001, as amended Section 239 2C1. One item, Lac Seul Road, GTP Block 10 RP, all those other numbers. And item 2, labor relations or employee negotiations, CAO resignation and recruitment of new CAO. May I have a motion, please? Councillor Forbes, seconded by Councillor Curlew. All in favor? We will now move into closed session.